There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
I'm very excited to welcome a brand new guest to Bite Size Book Chats. This is Ashwin from Kerala State in India. Ashwin, welcome.
Thanks for having me, Sean.
We have had quite a challenge with Wi-Fi and Zoom, and this is our second attempt, and it's so far so good. So Ashwin is here to talk about a fascinating sounding novel put out by the inimitable Seagull Press in India, who put out the best, most gorgeous physical specimens of books I've ever seen. And this is a very intriguing one that's been on my radar for more than a year. I'm going to enlarge the full title on the cover so the viewers can see how it is laid out. But the title is Necklace, Choker, Then, Meanwhile, Now, a small novel in fragments by the Slovakian writer Jana Bodnárová, translated from Slovak by Jonathan Gresty. It came out last November. Ashwin, please tell us about this book.
Okay, so it's about this woman called Sarah who goes back to Slovakia to sell off her ancestral home. And this ancestral home basically becomes a motif to delve into her family history, and with that, the past century of Slovakian history. So then is basically before World War II, during somewhere around 1920 to 22. Meanwhile is around the 40s and 50s. And now is the present day.
And the present day is close to 2022, or do we have a sense of when the present of the novel is?
Around 10, 11-ish. It's the pre-pandemic world, basically.
I see. Okay, great. Tell us about the structure. It's pretty unique.
Yeah, so it's written in fragments. So, it's like, when you think about it, it's like how memories work, right? We don't remember something from like Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. It's directly just the memory itself that pops. So that's what happens here as well. Some of the memories are just about a landscape. Some of the memories are about the incident, but the memories about the incident, directly the incident itself is mentioned rather than some aforementioned build-up or something. Sometimes it's a letter. To give you an example, if we can take Maria Stepanova's In Memory of Memory, where certain fragments were just direct memories rather than them building up to an event. So it's a story, but not told in a traditional manner, not told in a setup, action, conclusion, those motifs are not used. It's instead the incident itself that is presented. And we are given a smorgasbord or a bunch of such incidents, and which together form this mosaic of, personal as well as political life in Czechoslovakia.
You just made a reference to Maria Stepanova.
Yeah, she's a Russian poet and an author whose not novel actually, it's originally a work of non-fiction called In Memory of Memory, was shortlisted for the Booker International Prize in 2020. So
I remember.
Yeah, and especially when it was shortlisted, it caused quite a stir because the publisher Fitzcarraldo published it under their non-fiction catalog.
Yeah.
So there was some, debate around if it's published under non-fiction, should the Booker Prize nominate it, since the Booker Prize is all about fiction. But maybe I think so. This is not the first time. Yes, even Annie Ernaux's The Years was shortlisted for the Booker International Prize once. So I think so. Maybe they are moving on from just a fiction moniker to storytelling in general, and that they are planning to include non-fiction as well from now on. So whether fiction or non-fiction, if it tells a story, it's eligible for the Booker. Maybe that's what they're alluding to.
What about that ambiguity about this text? Does it read like a novel? I mean, I know that it's an experimental in form, but is it one of the questions that you had as a reader when you were reading it? I wonder if this is true or not, type of reading experience.
Yes, I was curious about whether these facts are true or not, because there are certain historical allusions that I wanted to dig deeper into, And Slovak history is something which I personally I'm not that familiar with. I'm someone who's a history buff since school. Historical fiction is like one of my favorite types of literature. So anything with a historical background to it automatically makes me want to Google, or, I know Google is not completely reliable in terms of history, or, at least read other works by authors from that country, or both fiction as well as non-fiction. So yes, in that manner, as you asked, Sean, it is quite intriguing. It does make you wonder, like, did this actually happen, or in a good way, like, it piques your curiosity basically.
As you're describing this book and its style and its structure, I'm going to say that it sounds like a book that demands or expects a lot of its reader. Would that be fair?
Yes, that would be fair. And the main thing I feel it expects from the reader is like to expect some degree of ambiguity, to expect some degree of non-conformity in terms of style.
That's right.
So if the reader hasn't read fragmented literature, I'm not sure if this is a good starting point.
Okay.
I would recommend reading some literature written in this style before getting to this, because fragmented is kind of the name of the game here.
Ashwin has written a fantastic review of this on Goodreads. I will not only link to Ashwin's Goodreads page, but also to this specific review because it was gorgeous. So according to the Seagull Books webpage, she was born in 1950 in what was then Czechoslovakia, which I believe would be on the Slovakian side of things now. She has her finger in many artistic pies, not only writing prose, but also poetry, children's work, radio plays, screenplays, video performances. For many years, she wrote almost exclusively about contemporary art. So I'm going to guess with that background that this text, however fragmentary, is quite vivid visually.
Yes, it is. In fact, if I may, can I read the opening paragraph?
Oh, please do.
A sultry night, phantom voices, eddies of the wind, the house crackling, creaking, whistling, its wood, glass, furniture, wallpaper, floorboards. And then when Sarah turned on the lights, the bodies of moths crackled with a deathly sound on the bare light bulbs.
It's lovely. Like I say, this book had been on my radar since before it was published. You have made me want to get to it all the sooner. And Ashwin, you're a fantastic guest. I hope you'll come back.
Thank you so much, Sean. I would love to come back someday as well.
I would like to welcome back for her second appearance on Bite Size Book Chats, Sofia from Malta. Welcome back, Sofia.
Hi.
Sofia reads such interesting stuff, and I saw on her Goodreads that she had read this novel that is originally written in English but set in Spain by a debut novelist. It's called El Hacho by Luis Carrasco, published in 2018 by Epoch Press, which is a wonderful small press in the UK. Sofia, tell us about this book.
First of all, it was my first experience with Epoch Press, and I was very impressed. And I like this book because, first of all, it's short. I'm losing patience with doorstoppers. So, superfluous words are... so this was nice. It was just good words, good writing, nothing superfluous. We just get the message, we get the images, and it's super like that for me.
It was, I think it's under 100 pages, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
So what is the opening premise?
The book, basically, we have Curro, and in the course of a few months, we see what he has to fight against, basically. What you can see it even in the blurb. There's a drought, then there's a deluge, family problems, there's modernization of Spain going on. So I think these are all things that we come up against. It's nothing extraordinary, no aliens from space, but we each come up against them in our lives, and we each have to find our way. And with Kurro going through his own way, you can follow and say, yes, I would have done that. No, I did not do that. Maybe, compare it to your own life.
So Kurro, the protagonist, he is an olive farmer in Spain, apparently in the Andalusian mountains.
Yes. Basically, the olive farm is terraced inside the mountain. And
so the setting is quite vivid.
For me, yeah.
You felt like you were there.
I felt that. I could imagine the drought. First of all, I come from a place where drought is normal because it's so hot here. So I could imagine the earth.
Is it set close to the present day, or is it set back in the past?
I think it's a bit back. It's a bit back. No mobile phones.
So, no mobile phones. And that could be because of the rustic lifestyle, but probably it means it's set in the era before.
Yeah. So I'll say 60s, 70s.
Okay. But it occurs to me that it would be difficult not to read it through the lens of global warming and so on, drought and whatnot. Yeah.
Even if you know that it happened before, now you're sure that if he's still alive, that's what he's grappling against and more. Because I don't know if you see the news in Spain with all this heat, there are lots of forest fires. But also the book brings up the question, what's best, giving in to development, modernization, clinging on to what your parents gave you and that type of lifestyle? Because I don't think there is one size fits all solution for everyone. That's the kind of question that this book brought up in my mind.
Described as being poignant and hopeful.
Yes, it is.
Are there a lot of other characters in it?
Basically, just family members and a neighbor and the animals. That's it. There's not a multitude you have to keep track of.
I'm not surprised, given that it's only about 82 pages.
Yeah.
I love reading farm novels because I grew up on the farm. And
you can compare.
That's right. I never really got the farm when I was growing up there. Like, I didn't understand it. I didn't really enjoy the lifestyle. But now, and I have no desire to be a farmer, but reading fiction set on farms, really, it's quite a personal reading experience for me. So I seek farm novels out. So I'm looking forward to this one. So we don't know a whole lot about the author, but he lives in Gloucester in the UK, I just found out, but is of Spanish background. You posed the question in your review, which on Goodreads, which is great. I'm going to link to it. That this novel, one of the central questions is, do we need work which we love to do to be happy, or can we only be happy with more money regardless of the work we do? And I'm assuming I know the answer to that, but we're not going to say what answer the novel holds up to us.
I think when you read this, you will see that we have to strive to go up the mountain and work out what's best for us. It's not the paycheck that would make us happy, but...
Well, since I don't have much of a paycheck these days, I'm extraordinarily happy because I have much more time to read, but not a lot of money.
Exactly. You're making such good lemonade.
That's right. I see Epoch Press has just more recently brought out, let's see, when was it?
Ghosts of Spring.
Ghosts of Spring, his second novel, last November. I actually have a review copy.
It's great because I'm looking forward to when they put it on into an ebook form. And this time, Ghost of Spring is based in UK.
Sofia, thank you for telling us about this novella.
Thank you.
So how exciting is this? I'm welcoming a somewhat new booktuber who has arrived on BookTube, I'm not sure how long ago, he'll probably tell us, with a splash, and is just a growing concern and puts the rest of us to shame in terms of the sheer volume of what he reads and reviews. This is Fraser of the fabulous BookTube channel, Fraser Simon's Springboard Thought. Fraser, welcome.
Thank you very much. Long time viewer, right? That's what people say.
Long time viewer, first time caller.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
In fact, I want to start by thanking you because you were one of the main supporters. I don't think there has been one episode, and I'm just editing episode 52, that you have not very warmly commented on. So thank you for your support.
Oh, you're very welcome. I love this. Love this stuff.
That is awesome. That's a big part of what keeps me going. So Fraser's joining us from Alberta, and I've recently moved back to Saskatchewan. So, I think one of these days we're going to have to meet.
Absolutely. At Poached.
At Poached. They're good. They're very good. So Fraser used to be temporarily in Saskatoon, and he has recommended a breakfast place that I have to check out. Oh, and one other thing I want to say, and then I want Fraser to give a shout out for his own channel. But Fraser has recently teamed up with Shelley Swearingen, and their Zoom chats are, I would say, the hottest thing, the most entertaining thing on BookTube. So you have to watch all of Fraser's videos, but do especially, I would say, check out the collaborations, I think several times a week, Zoom chats that he's been having with Shelley, because they are just not only informative, but very entertaining. Fraser, tell us more about your channel.
My channel is mostly, I started it as a sort of video diary, but not a vlog, of just what I was reading. And because I read so much stuff, I wanted some kind of record so that, say, in future years or whatever, if I wanted to know how I felt about a specific book, I could just look. But then rapidly I found community members commenting and stuff like that, and that quickly supplanted why I made the videos in the first place. The interaction, the lovely people, the networking, such as yourself, and finding your channel, I think, relatively close, to when you started Bite Size Chats. I know I was there for the first one, at least. Pretty much all of my channel these days is just recent reads and the odd tag, and then the two millennials with Shelley Swearingen stuff that we do, which is also delightful. And thank you for commenting on that. It made my day.
And then you guys have had about 17 videos all about the Booker in the last few days too. So
yeah,
I'm going to be quoting a lot of fictional numbers that, just for exaggeration, it is hyperbole, but only slightly. So let's transition into, of the maybe 717 books Fraser has read this month or last month or whatever it was, is this queer novel from Pakistan. It is called Other Names for Love by Taymour Soomro. And it sounds fascinating. Tell us about this book, Fraser.
Yeah. It is a book very much rooted in place, not so much time, as we'll discuss later, but it's about a young man who just wants to go to spend his summer with his mother, and is instead made to go to rural Pakistan with his father to learn the sort of inner workings of the business that has been cultivated through a number of generations through his father, the sort of patriarch of this place. And also as a secondary motive of making him sort of man up, is how it is sort of put. His father, Rafiq, makes him have friends with somebody else who he wants him to model after, basically. And it's about his time predominantly learning about the culture, about the land, the dynamics, kind of the exploitation of Rafiq and the people who work the land, and the perception of both of the classes towards this stuff. Like, it is very complex as to how this arrangement has taken place, and it seems like a very cultural thing steeped in a long history, because there's a lot of talk from Rafiq about how he manages to hold on to the land when he shouldn't even be able to, from like a governmental standpoint, something I had no idea about. And then, just a sort of like a Bildungsroman Roman type situation with the boy, other than that. Yeah.
So a couple things I would like to add to what you said, just from scanning the synopsis. You said he wanted to spend the summer with his mother, and that was in London, right?
In London, yeah.
So quite a change of plans.
He was not pleased.
And who does his father set him up with? Excuse the choice of words, but he wants him to spend time with this local boy. Tell us about him and how does his father's plans go south?
Yeah. I think it's, from what I recall, a separate family. His cousin, perhaps, also owns some of the land, and so is kind of ingrained in how things go. And he simultaneously wants the son to learn from his cousin's son as well, how everything works, but also imitate the mannerisms and like how, I don't know, cool, manly, on board with the plan of inheriting this land, ostensibly exploiting the workers and everything, except that what both of the parents don't know about that boy becomes sort of the main, I don't know, thrust of that part of the narrative, where they get to know each other in a much more intimate way than the parents see coming. He's also educated in just how different the rural versus urban areas of Pakistan is, and therefore like the reader is as well.
A moment ago, you used, I think the phrase was the thrust of the narrative, something like that. And I'm going to just pass by all the jokes I might make about that choice of words, but we don't need to withhold from the viewer what happens. Basically, they have a love affair, these two boys.
Yes, yeah.
So it becomes quite a queer tale.
Yes, and basically, yeah, so very much like an awakening experience in not the way that the parents had planned. It contextualizes and embeds his own sense of identity and queerness for the rest of the narrative in the future as well, even though it transitions to like a different place.
And then there is, according to the synopsis, 2 timelines, but you say it's actually more complex than that. Tell us about, without any spoilers, about what the other timelines or the other parts of the story are about.
It's probably helpful to think of it as almost 3 short stories that come together. The second one jumps forward in time somewhat to show a sort of almost meteoric rise of the family. And the third is the fall of the family and the return to home that recontextualizes everything yet again and juxtaposes everything that he learns and is inundated with at the very beginning. The second part is very short, especially compared to the first, which is, I think, most of the novel, if I remember correctly. And then also, even the first part can be almost divvied up as short stories because there is a long journey section of that narrative that it sort of separates when he actually gets there, meets the boy, gets to know them, and they have their affair and whatnot. And then the third one, yeah, is predominantly just juxtaposing everything.
And you described this in your review as a quiet, plotless novel, which sounds fantastic for me. It wouldn't be for every reader. And you also have really good things to say about the audiobook.
Yes. Yeah. The audio narrator was fantastic. I don't know if you've had this experience, but I hate it when you have a male narrator that tries to do female voices and just makes them like kind of overly effeminate, feministic, kind of just very like odd, you know? He does a really good job of, yeah, exactly. He does a really good job of making everybody sound very distinct, you know, who is talking, and he does really good justice to the prose work, which I think is really phenomenal. If you like descriptive language, if you don't like descriptive language, maybe you won't like this. I think likening it to A Passage North would be helpful, maybe, if people have read that.
For me,
yeah,
that works. I love that novel. Offline, you said that you wished it was a little bit more queer.
Yes, they sort of like culminate, and then it almost feels like a fade to black, and then moves the narrative forward, and then moves the narrative forward. And so it's interesting because there's like queer longing and there's questioning stuff that it's handled very well, but then it feels odd that it sort of elides what like the fruition of all that stuff is. And so I would have liked for it to dwell a little bit more into that. And I think it would have even been like a more hard-hitting juxtaposition for the future part if that had happened. But it's still a phenomenal debut. The structure is fairly interesting. It just, has a little bit more to go on that front. I think plotless novels sort of do that, hey? Like where some people just really need to be driven by events, whereas this is much more of an interior novel, especially in the beginning.
A frequent criticism I have of the novels I read is there's a little bit too much happening in it.
Plotty.
For my too much plot. Well, I definitely want to try this. And Fraser, thanks for telling us about it. And I hope you'll come back.
Absolutely. Anytime.
This is very exciting to have Justyna from Ireland back. Hello, Justyna.
Thank you for having me, Sean. It's always a pleasure.
Well, we're doing the time zone difference is quite a bit different now. So now it's wine o'clock there. What are you drinking?
Yes, for once it's wine o'clock here. It's 7 p.m., not 10 a.m. as it normally would be when you were in Japan. So,
and your wine looks a little. Is it kind of a cherry wine or something?
It's rosé. It's not.
It's a rosé. It's a rosé. Okay, well,
that's what it looks.
How many glasses did you have before we started?
One. Should be okay.
I'm so jealous. It's only noon here. We are going to talk about a really fascinating sounding work of nonfiction translated from the German. It is called Aimée and Jaguar, A Love Story, Berlin, 1943, by Erika Fischer, translated from the German by Edna McCown. And it was originally printed in Germany in 1994 and the English translation 1998. And this is a lesbian love story between, well, I'll let you reveal who it's between, but it's just amazing. Tell us what's this story about? It's true.
Yes, it's nonfiction. It's not a novel. It's actual story between a Nazi officer's wife and a Jewish girl who went into hiding in 1940s in Berlin. And when I heard about the book, my first thought was, how can there be how would they meet a Nazi officer's wife and a Jewish girl that is in hiding underground? How would they meet and fall in love? But the explanation was quite simple. Aimée, from the title, her real name, because that was one of the nicknames they were using in their private correspondence and poems they were writing to each other. Her real name was Lily Wust, and she was quite typical housewife, like a Nazi officer's wife. She had 4 kids. Her husband was fighting, and she had 4 kids, and she was like a perfect example of a Nazi motherhood. It should be the purpose then in those times of all the pure race Aryan mothers to have as many kids as possible. So she got bronze medal for motherhood because she had 4 German pure race boys. Because of that, she was entitled to a spacious apartment, and she was also entitled to mother's help. A young girl was to help her with the kids. So the young girl, she was anti-Nazi, but of course she wasn't saying that in public. And she started working there for Aimée to help her with the kids. And she was hiding a Jewish girl, Jaguar from the title. Her real name was Felice Schragenheim. That's how they met, through that girl. That was like mother's help or like nanny for the Nazi officer's wife, the Aimée.
And just so I'm clear, the mother's help, was she also Jewish or just anti-Nazi?
No, she was just anti-Nazi. She was helping the Jewish people.
I think you told me offline she was lesbian.
Yes, she was lesbian as well. That's how she knew the Jewish girl, the Jaguar.
That's how they met. So it was under really kind of false pretenses. She wouldn't know that.
The Nazi officer's wife, let's call her like Aimée here from the title of the book. She was like a perfect Nazi Hausfrau. And I think one day she just made some comment about Jews, basically that she can spot a Jew or she can smell a Jew. And then when Felice Jaguar, the Jewish girl, heard it from the other girl, then she was like, well, let's test it and let's meet with her. So they met in some cafe, like, just three women meeting. And then that's how they met, how they fell in love, basically at first sight. They started corresponding, like writing letters to each other and poems. And that's basically how it started. Jaguar started being in like Aimée's house. But Aimée had no idea that Jaguar, Felice, was a Jew. She had no idea for first, I don't know, maybe a year.
There's aspects of the story that still sound improbable, and I'm not questioning the truthfulness of the story at all, because it's, I think it's been documented not only by this author, but it's just so crazy.
Yeah, that's what interested me in the book. I was like, how? But from the book, we find out that Aimée, which is the Nazi officer's wife, while her husband was at the front, she was seeing like other men in her house. Basically, when she met Jaguar, I would say instant infatuation. There were lots of, maybe not loads, but few of Jaguar's Jewish friends coming to Aimée's house. They were just socializing there. They felt safe there because who will be looking for them in Nazi officer's wife's house? So, and they were all underground Jews, which for me, I don't know about you, Sean, but for me, underground Jews, I was thinking it means more Jewish people hiding somewhere in, like, other people's houses.
Presumably politically active against the Nazis in some kind of...
Yes. And in case of Jaguar, it was not so much hiding. She wasn't hiding that much at that stage in anyone's house. It was like when her grandmother in, I think, 1938 was taken to a camp. Then she tore off her Jewish star and got false papers. And then she started pretending she wasn't a Jew, just going as a German woman in Berlin. So she had lots of friends that were like underground in that way. They weren't like hiding, like I'm Polish and I read many books where like Jews were literally hiding in like Polish people's houses. So it wasn't like that here. On the contrary, she was very going to later in the relationship when they started like going out together. They were going to those like fancy hotel restaurants that were just opposite Hitler's headquarters, full of SS men. They were just, which Jaguar's friends, Jewish friends, thought that was way too dangerous what she was doing, but she was just like trying to live normal life. So that's what in her case meant being underground, just like pretending she was not Jewish. But at the same time, it's very important to mention that she was, she had an part in the Jewish underground movement. So she was like a courier and like she was disappearing. That's how in the end, Aimée, the Nazi officer's wife, started asking her lots of questions because she was like, you just disappear for like periods of time. I don't know where you are. And after like loads of questioning, then Jaguar told her that she was Jewish, which didn't change that much between them.
Wow. And I think that's all we'll say about that, because even though this is a work of nonfiction and a fairly well-known book, I think that's something the readers would like to read for themselves. The author, Fischer, what's her name again?
Erika Fischer.
She based this book on interviews with Aimée, right?
Yes. She got in touch with Aimée when Aimée was 80 years old. that's why she had like first hand access to all the love poems, to all the correspondence, to Aimée's diary entries, which is very important, obviously, for the book. And also lots of pictures that are actually in the book. For example, here there is a picture of, that's Jaguar, and that's Aimée, the Nazi officers. Yeah, so.
It
Definitely.
sounds incredible, Justyna. I'm so glad that you read it and then came on and told us all about it.
Do.